Hello, I'm Davide Maddaloni, and my thesis advisors are Mario Menino Martinez and Filippo Terragni, and I will be presenting experimental investigation of space plasma thrusters via data-driven analysis techniques. The thesis is run under the framework of the Doctoral project, as my colleagues Diego and Serian. So, all right. What is my motivation? What am I studying? I'm studying basically plasma oscillations. Plasma oscillations are a topic that span a wide-ranging, a lot of fields, starting from electric propulsion to fusion reactors, from astrophysics, and much more. Treating them is extremely difficult because you always have an interplay of the oscillation itself with plasma turbulence, electromagnetic fields, and charged particles. So this makes the topic extremely challenging to deal with. The role of plasma oscillations and cross transport has been seen in the last year to be affecting the propulsive performances of the thrusters. And one well-known example is the anomalous transport in all-effect thrusters that has been already discussed by some of my colleagues beforehand. Oscillations to date are mostly characterized in most mature technologies such as all-effect thrusters and ion thrusters. But for instance, anomalous transport is still an open topic because there are some models that predict that the electrons should transport with a certain amount, but they fail to predict the magnitude of this transport by a magnitude of 10, more or less. So this means that there's still something that we don't really understand yet. While on the other side, magnetic nozzles are a newer technology for which oscillations have not been treated yet. So my thesis is mostly focused on Hall thrusters and an helicon plasma thruster. So you have different plume geometries that will lead you to different kind of oscillations. I will be using data-driven algorithms to deal with the data. Usually dealing with raw data is particularly difficult because you have noise, you have interplays of dynamics that make you difficult to understand what you are looking at, and also the fact that you have to interpret the data meaningfully. So data-driven techniques are emerging in the latest years, say like couple of decades, as very powerful and versatile to deal with data, to post-process them. They help to reduce the researcher bias and help you extract hidden information that you usually have in the data and are not really easy to infer. The first part of my thesis was kind of mainly focused on higher order dynamic mode decomposition, which is a Fourier-like expansion that aims to decompose the data in such a way in which you have basically, for each, you have a mode, which is usually complex, associated to an amplitude, which is real. This amplitude is associated to the dynamical importance of the mode, while you also have one single frequency for each mode, and alongside this frequency, you have also a growth rate. And the growth or decay rate, which is usually stating whether this mode is stable, is damped, is exploding, or it's indeed stable. But classic DMD usually provides spurious results because whenever you have data which are strongly nonlinear with high spectral complexity, you will have some results that are spurious, meaning like not physically meaningful. So high order dynamic mode composition allows for improved performances by using time-lagged snapshots so that you can sort of like fill up the missing gaps in your spectral complexity. And the main advantage of this technique in particular is that it allows you to decompose different dynamics so that you can rebuild them singularly. And this is basically what we have been doing on all thruster simulations provided by one of our postdocs in EP2 group, Adrian Dominguez Vasquez. We have been able to see two different dynamics, which is the blue one, the breathing dynamic, and the red one is the ion transit dynamic, for different operational conditions of the thruster. So the first one is nominal with 300 voltages of discharge voltage and 5 milligrams per second of anode injected mass flow rate. The second one is like with lower voltage, and the third one is for higher mass flow rate. You see that the relative importance of the modes of the dynamics change depending on the operational condition. And we have been able to separate them because you see there is a clear separation of the two dynamics. Also, especially because we have seen that the two modes behave completely differently. The first dynamics, the breathing mode, is a standing oscillation, so a global oscillation that then doesn't move. It happens mainly in the chamber of the thruster, and it shows a clear predator-prey dynamic, predator-prey model. You see that in this plot here, you see the neutral density, which is like the pink line, peaks before the neutral density does. So this means that there is an ionization process going on, and the black cross line is indeed S-ion, is the ion production term, which peaks right in the middle. So this means that the plasma density preys on the neutral density. Moreover, we have seen also how the electron temperature and axial electric field are always in phase, and this is also according to existing models. On the other side, you have that the ion transit dynamics is a traveling wave. It originates from the anode and just flows to the nozzle, which is represented by a black vertical line, and it flows into the plume. We can see here the pictures A, B, C, D are 4 different phase instants of the ITT oscillation period, which is namely 8.5 microseconds. And you see basically that the oscillation is clearly traveling right-wise. We have published an article recently on that, on plasma sources, science and technology in April of this year. Furthermore, we have also performed experiments on the plume of the Helicon plasma thrusters that is available in the EP2 UC3M facility. We have analyzed so far different positions of the probes. We have used 2 different probes. The positions are here in white dots. It's a little bit difficult to see them probably from there. But we have analyzed different positions at different radial distances from the plume exit, from the nozzle, and to different angles, so that you could see actually what's going on also when you move out radially outwards. The probes have been left to floating. This means no net current flowing into the probe, and biased to ion saturation. So this means a very low potential. We have used 2 probes for this campaign, which are basically displaced in the azimuthal direction in a way that you can spatially resolve the oscillations happening indeed, in fact, in the azimuthal direction by means of the k-omega technique. The k-omega techniques basically allows you to extract a dispersion diagram of a signal only by using 2 probes. Imagine you have a wave traveling to the right, and you have your array of probes. If the wave is traveling to the right, the signal will be investing the first probe first and the second probe later, so that the 2 signals will have a phase difference. This phase difference, it can be inferred from the cross correlation of the Fourier transforms of these 2 signals, imagining you have them, the probes positioned at x1 and x2. You can get the phase by doing the arctangent of the real and imaginary part of this cross correlation function. And by dividing that with the distance, Cp, you get what is called the local wave number, which is a sort of like approximation of the real dispersion diagram. This local wave number, this dispersion diagram is then enriched with depth by averaging the power spectral density of the 2 signals, so that you can see which are the regions that have more power in your dispersion diagram. This is basically what we see in 3 different positions. Like this is the same axial position, but 3 different angles. You see that these are the PhDs, the Fourier transforms. By moving radially outwards, there is an evolution of the spectrum. The first spectra, they're kind of similar, show one oscillation in below the 10 kilohertz. It's namely at 6 kilohertz, which is basically dominant all throughout the center of the plume, from knee equal to 0 up to knee equal to 30, more or less. And while if you move radially outwards, you start to see another oscillation that it's in between 10 and 20 kilohertz. It's around 17. And then if you move more radially outwards, you see that another strong oscillation starts to appear in the 20, 40 range, kilohertz range, and there's also a second sort of like bump in the picture on the right between 50 and 80 kilohertz. This means that we are assuming that it's the first harmonic of what we see in the 25, 40 kilohertz. Then what these oscillations look like spatially? It's basically, the first one doesn't have any trend in the dispersion diagram, while you can see that the last two ones show a clear downward trend. In our case, this means that it's a rightwise traveling wave, so it means that it's a clockwise oscillation. The first one is a very broadband oscillation, starts from around 20 and goes up to 100, while the other one, the slope changes, and you also have you see that there's more power in the region at 20, 40 kilohertz. That's the peak we were seeing before. So the first one is basically, we assume it to be, it's a lower frequency oscillation. We assume it to be linked to an ionization process, but we still have to make a thorough literature review on this. We think there is no correlation in this plot, so it means that it's not traveling at least in the azimuthal direction. It could be traveling in other directions, but not in the azimuthal one, at least. So while the other one, the higher frequency one, we assume it to be linked to a sort of instability that is called lower hybrid drift instability, that usually takes place when you have pressure gradients or density gradients, that in our case with magnetic nozzles, it's pointing towards the center of the thruster, of the plume. Upcoming objectives is like to extend what we have done with further experiments by using a multi-probe array, as you can see in the picture, so that you can basically resolve not only one direction in the spatial domain, but you can resolve basically the full 3D wave number space if you use basically 4 probes displaced like that. We will also run other experiments by collecting plasma properties, remarkable plasma properties to us in the points we measure, such as density, temperature, so that you can see basically how is the plasma behaving, or also you can tell where the center of the plume is exactly, because usually you can say it's more or less in the center, but like it can be a little bit tilted. And again, we also have to complete the literature review in order to give a physical framework, frame these oscillations in a physical way, so that we can explain what's going on and say what are these things for real. Performed research activities so far include participation to the IIAA Propulsion Energy Conference in 2021, journal papers, as I already said, published recently, and participation to the E-B Plasma Workshop in 2022 with a poster session. So thank you for your attention, and if you have any question.